All right, let's get right into it. We are about to pull back the curtain on one of the oldest and, honestly, one of the most powerful tricks in the book. It's a type of deception you absolutely run into every single day, whether you know it or not. So, take a look at these. What's the connection? At first glance, they might seem totally unrelated, but there's a hidden thread, a very specific language trick that ties them all together. See, the trick is that every single one of these phrases hinges on a key word that's, well, it's slippery. Words like natural, freedom, soon. They're like little language traps. They let the speaker imply one thing. Well, technically, they could mean something else entirely. It's a perfect setup for misunderstanding, or, even worse, for deliberate manipulation. Now, this whole double-meaning word game, it actually has a name. And trust me, once you learn what it is, you're going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere. It's called equivocation. At its core, it's a logical fallacy. It happens when a key term in an argument sneakily shifts its meaning halfway through. And that little switch is what can make a really weak argument seem strong, or it can completely mislead you into believing something that just isn't true. Okay, so that's the textbook definition. But what does this look like out in the real world? Let's dive into a few examples of how it's used to influence you every single day. Think about food advertising. You see an ad for a light snack. Your brain probably jumps straight to healthy, right? Low calorie. But the company could just be referring to its light color, or maybe it has an airy texture. See? They're using that ambiguity in the word light to give you a healthy vibe without actually making a claim they have to prove. Oh man, we see this constantly in politics. A politician gets on stage and says, "We stand for freedom." The crowd goes wild. But what does that mean? For some people in that crowd, it means economic freedom, lower taxes. For others, it means social liberties, like freedom of speech. The politician gets to use one powerful, vague word to sound good to everybody, all without committing to a single specific policy. And this even happens in places you'd least expect it, like a courtroom. A lawyer might argue that their client's actions were lawful. Now, they could just mean that no specific law on the books was technically broken. But that argument can cleverly sidestep the much bigger question of whether the actions were ethical or violated broader legal principles. It's a way to paint a misleading picture of what really happened. But listen, this is not some new trick invented for the internet age. Not at all. Equivocation is an ancient art. It's a tool of influence that has been used to shape major historical events for centuries. I mean, just look at this. All the way back in 1535, Sir Thomas More famously used silence and incredibly careful wording to avoid both treason and betraying his own beliefs. Fast forward to 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation carefully equivocated by only freeing slaves in enemy territory. And of course, during the Cold War, you had terms like peacekeeping being used to justify full-blown military actions. This stuff has real high-stakes consequences. Okay, so we get it. We know what it is, and we know how it's used. The big question is, how do we defend ourselves against it? Let's build a simple toolkit so you can spot equivocation and sharpen your critical thinking skills. It's really just a simple 3-step mental checklist. First, whenever you hear an argument, just identify the main word or phrase it all seems to hang on. Second, ask yourself, wait a minute, could this word mean something else in a different context? And finally, the most important part, check to see if the speaker is subtly switching between those meanings to make their point. It's all about becoming a more active, critical listener. So, if you take one thing away, let it be this. When you feel that sense of fogginess, that ambiguity in someone's language, your best defense is to demand clarity. Simply asking, "What exactly do you mean by that?" is one of the most powerful questions you can ever ask. And this all builds up to a much bigger question, right? When we use language this way, are we just being persuasive or are we being manipulative? This really gets to the ethics of the whole thing. This is a perfect example of how equivocation can be used to sanitize reality. No one wants to support torture, but enhanced interrogation? That sounds almost clinical, doesn't it? Collateral damage is a way to talk about civilian casualties without feeling the full weight of the reality. These aren't just words. They are very deliberate choices designed to hide the truth and soften the blow. And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. It all comes down to a balance, right? Persuasion is a normal part of how we communicate, but we also have a moral responsibility to use language to tell the truth and to help people understand, not to intentionally confuse them just to get our way.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. As we all try to navigate a world that's just saturated with advertising, with political spin, with endless online arguments, we have to constantly ask ourselves, where is that line? When does someone's attempt to persuade us cross over into a clear act of deception?